Hello and welcome back to my corner. I am, as always, your DM, and today we've got something a little bit different, I would say. I've been watching a few videos from Jordan Peterson, and he's extremely intelligent, and I find myself sort of enraptured by him whenever he speaks. He's very eloquent in how he presents himself and how he presents his words, and that's what I try to be. Um, and I was watching this video through another YouTuber. I didn't get very far. I got, I think, maybe like less than a minute, and then went, okay, yeah, no, this is a video that I need to do. It demonstrates a lot of how I try to live my life and how I think everyone needs to live their life. Especially with everything that's going on in the world, in all aspects of it, the gaming space, political, international, everywhere. There can be this real sense of division, and we need to make. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this video.
I was thinking the other day, a journalist asked me why people are responding so positively to what I'm saying, the young men, for example, and I thought, why? Yeah, that's a good question. He says, well, I'm actually on their side. I'm really happy that they're not wasting their lives. I'm really sad to see that people are disenchanted and nihilistic and depressed and anxious and aimless and perverse and vengeful and all of those things. It's terrible. And then to see people question whether that's necessary and then to start to rise out of it. It's so fun. Like last night.
So before he gets into this, I just want to interject a little bit. A lot of what's happening today is people do not necessarily always see a point to trying. Whether it be in their financial lives or their careers or what have you. A lot of people just don't see a point. And it's really disheartening to hear. I'm not entirely sure how old Jordan Peterson is, but I'm a fairly young individual, and I see extremely young kids that have this worldview, and I'd never even heard of this kind of worldview until I was an adult. So
I was after my talk. It's overwhelming. I don't usually think about these things, but I was after my talk last night, and so all these people line up, and they have their 15 seconds with me, and they're kind of tentative. They're excited and attentive when they come up to talk to me, and then they have 15 seconds of time to tell me something. I'm really listening to them, and they're hesitant about whether or not to share the good news about their life. And I think it's often because when people share good news about their life, people don't necessarily respond positively. They don't get encouragement. And people need so little encouragement. It's just unbelievable. And so they'll tell me something good, and I think, oh, that's so good. Somebody says, oh, I'm getting along way better with my father. I hadn't seen him for 10 years, and now we get along. It's like, God, great. Yeah. And the power of that, you can't overstate the power of that for individuals to get their life together. The individual is an unbelievably powerful force, and every single person who gets their act together a little bit has the capacity to spread that around them. It's a chain reaction, and so it's a lovely thing to see. And
that's fantastic.
Our daughter ended her life at 24 due to depression. If someone is determined to end their life, how can one change their mind? Oh, well, first of all, I'm very sorry about that. That's a terrible thing. Look, I had this friend her there's been a lot of depression in our family, so it's a question that cuts close to the bone. Anyways, I had this friend, a friend of my parents, and her granddaughter committed suicide, She was just beating herself up about that. What could have I done? What could have I done differently? This is the problem with suicide. It leaves everybody behind thinking, oh my God, what could have I done? I could have treated the person better. I could have listened. I could have been there. It's like, and she was just beating herself up about this, really feeling that she wasn't a useful person, that she'd failed as a grandmother. She's a really good person, And so I went for a walk with her, and I said, and she's married, and she likes her husband, and he's a really good guy. And I said, look, you're blaming yourself for your granddaughter's suicide. It's like, are you blaming your husband? Are you sitting him down and telling him what a useless bastard he was as a grandfather because his granddaughter committed suicide and how he failed completely? She said, no, I'd never do that. So I said, well, don't do it to yourself. One of the things that has just blown me away in the last year, because I've talked to lots of people live, but also lots of people online. But it's more obvious live, and it's obvious in this theater as well, is that I've gone around and spoken, and a large proportion of my audience has been young men, under 30, something like that. And I've spoken to them a lot about responsibility. And what's so odd about this is that of all the things that I've spoken about, because I can see the audience and I can feel how the audience is reacting, because I'm always paying attention to all of you insofar as I can manage that. So I get some sense of how what I'm saying is landing, which you have to do if you're going to speak effectively to people. And what happens is if I talk about responsibilities, everyone is silent, just like they are now. Silent and not moving, right? Focusing, attentive. Say,
when I was growing up, this kind of relates to me, which is why I'm going to say something here. When I was growing up, I was a very quiet individual. A lot of my peers, well, not necessarily peers, but a lot of the people around me, when I do talk to them, they regard me as being relatively intelligent. And I'd like to think that I'm intelligent in at least some capacities. I try to do all the research that I can on any topic that I'm trying to talk about. I try to make sure that I at least have the facts as we know them available, and if I am speaking on something, I try to make sure that I have the evidence on hand in case I am asked to produce it. But one thing I was always doing as a kid was I was always listening. I was just very attentive to everything that everyone else was saying. This was partially due to the fact that I was the youngest of three. My brothers both did a lot of the stupid things. I was a very safe kid. I didn't take a lot of risks. I didn't really do anything to cause trouble. I was pretty I was pretty much the stereotypical mama's boy. And I still am today. I love my mom. She's the best thing that's literally ever happened to me. Irregardless of the fact that she's the one that gave birth to me. But something I always did was always listened. I always made sure to pay attention to everything around me, because that's what my mom tried to teach me, was to listen. Because if you're not listening, how can you learn? So it makes me really happy to hear him pointing this out as a very important thing.
Pick up your responsibility. Pick up the heaviest thing you can and carry it. And the room goes quiet and everybody's eyes open, and I think, that always makes me break up. I don't know why. I was speaking to an English journalist today who was going to write an article in Spectator magazine, and I was talking about this, and at the same point in the discussion, I had the same emotional reaction. I don't really understand it. I think there's something about it that's so crucial, because we've been fed this unending diet of rights and freedoms, and there's something about that, there's something about that that's so pathologically wrong, and people are starving for the antidote, and the antidote is truth and responsibility, right? And it isn't because that's what you should do in some I know better or someone knows better for you what you should do sense. That's the secret to a meaningful life, and without a meaningful life, then all you have is suffering and nihilism and despair and all of that, and self-contempt, and that's not good. And so it's necessary for men to stand up and take responsibility, and they all know that and are starving for that message, and the message is more that that's also a good thing to stand up and take responsibility, because you're cursed so much now from when you're young with this notion that your active engagement with the world is part of what is destroying and undermining the planet and adding to the tyranny of the social systems. It's like, how about not so much of that, hey? Because it's too soul deadening. It's anti-human right to the core. And my sense instead is that, if you were able to reveal the best of yourself to you in the world, that you would be an overwhelming force for good. My primary motive as a clinical psychologist and educator is to help individuals live more meaningful and productive lives in harmony with their families and their community. That's my motive. And the evidence for that, I think, is, well, if people go online, and first of all, you can watch the lectures and decide for yourself, but you can also go, I suspect probably maybe 250,000 people have commented on the lectures and their effects on them. And so that's what people say. I'm watching the lectures, I'm trying to develop a vision for my life, I'm trying to become more responsible, and it's really helping. And that's what I hear all the time when I do these public lectures, which aren't political.
But when we gain success, we raise the bar. We set our ambitions higher. I mean, what is your end game? What do you want?
That's all. That's what I want. I want to help as many individuals as possible become more courageous, more truthful, and more engaged in the pursuit of individual, familial, and social harmony. That's what I want.
You're pursuing what is meaningful.
I'm pursuing, I believe that to be the case. It's certainly meaningful to me. I mean, there isn't, everywhere I go now, it doesn't matter where I land, in what airport, or if I walk down the street, 3 or 4 people will come up to me and they'll tell me, I was in a dark place, I was anxious, depressed, nihilistic, drug addicted, alcoholic, homeless, in jail, you name it. Bad relationship with my girlfriend, bad relationship with my parents. I've been watching your lectures or reading your book. I've been trying to tell the truth and get my life together, and everything is way better. And so then you think, well, if you could have what you wanted and what would be meaningful, you imagine you could go anywhere in the world and people would come up to you that were strangers and tell you that. That's as good as it gets. I read the story.
It's pretty powerful.
It's an autobiography, if I remember correctly, of the captain. I might be wrong about that, but I've got the basic story right. Well, they had a shipwreck in the Antarctica. And then they were there for a whole year in the Antarctica, and none of them died. Not one. He didn't lose a single man. Not one. He kept their morale high. And then they took this boat that was on the ship, and they crossed like 400 miles of the roughest ocean, the roughest frigid ocean in the world, right? You don't go in that ocean. And then they went to an island, and they walked across the island, across these mountains that no one else has ever climbed since. And they went to the city on the other side of the island, and they got a boat, and they went and rescued their compatriots, and everyone survived. It's like, Endurance is the name of the book. You read that book, man, you think, wow,
I'll have to check that book
people
out.
are really tough, and it's ridiculous. So who knows how tough you are? And maybe you find out by going out to find out how tough you are, right? So you take on a challenge, one that you think you can master, it's just a bit beyond your grasp. And you master it, and then you're a little tougher, and you think, hey, that worked out pretty well. And so then you're more of a monster. And then you go out and you find another challenge that's even bigger, and you think, well, maybe I can do that too. And then all of a sudden you can, and you get a little bit bigger, and God only knows what the limit is of you. And you find out by pushing yourself against the world, and of course that's what Abraham is doing. And so, see, we're very pessimistic, us modern people. You know, we're pessimistic about humanity, that's for sure. Dismal, wretched, planet-destroying, cancer on the planet, right, as the Club of Rome described us.
Yeah, so I have taken a little bit of psychology in my time in college, and of course I am no psychologist or anything like that. However, I have also seen a lot of videos, watched a lot of far smarter than me individuals talk on this subject. And amongst them, and in my college class especially, one thing that was always pointed out was that humans, our brains, our bodies tend to focus on the negatives a lot more than the positives. This is primarily a evolutionary associated trait. If you think about it, before we were modern humans, when we lived out in the wild, had to fight wild animals all the time for survival, you wouldn't necessarily want to waste time or energy focusing on things that are good. You would want to focus on the things that are bad, the things that are not healthy for your survival. That has since effectively evolved as we have with our social structures and with how the world itself has become. You can argue whether or not it's intentional nowadays or not. Some cases certainly seem to point to it being intentional. However, intentional or not, we focus on the negatives and the things that are bad a lot more than things that are positive. If you look at any news outlet, mainstream or not, generally speaking, almost all of them follow the same sort of structure. They will report on things that are really, really bad that are happening, and sometimes report on something good that happened. It's very depressing, honestly. And I wish we'd talk about more good things that happen in the world.
So pleasantly back in the 1960s, you know, and I don't know, maybe planet-destroying, cancer on the planet, right, as the Club of Rome described us so pleasantly back in the 1960s, you know, and I don't know, maybe we're ashamed of the Cold War, maybe we're ashamed of all the destruction in the 20th century and the hydrogen bomb and the, you know, the continuing catastrophes of our societies, and we're deeply ashamed of that and ashamed of ourselves personally, but it's a hell of a thing to, you know, call us a cancer on the planet. There's just no excuse for that, because what you do with cancer is eradicate it. And I don't think that that's a very noble motive, personally. And I think it says a lot about the people who would use such phraseology, that they would dare to conceptualize humanity in that manner. But you know, it would be nice if we could be optimistic. And I think, again, the problem with being optimistic is that it's naive. So then the question is there an optimism that's not naive? And I think there is. And the optimism that's not naive is in just a visualization of how strong people can be. So one of the things that I tell people, I've told my students in my class, in Maps of Meaning, here's a goal. You want to be the person at the funeral of your father that everyone can rely on. How would that be? You want to be the person who's broken and useless and adding to the misery in the corner. And look, I'm not making light of people's grief. You know, I understand grief. But who do you want to be when there's a crisis? Right? Do you want to be the person that everyone can turn to for strength? It's like, why the hell not? Why not that as a goal? That'd be a good goal, because then if there's a crisis, and there will be, it won't be such a bloody crisis, because there'll be someone there that can deal with it. You know, so when I went and talked to these people at the funeral home, I envisioned that. I thought, okay, well, this is something you have to contend with if you're going to be alive and adult. You have to contend with death and suffering, and you have to be ready for it. And you have to be there for the person, because that's all they're going to have. And so there's a goal, man. And in this time of nihilism, you know, it's what's the point of life? People ask. And they're taught that at universities. What's the point of life? Everything's interpretation. Humanity's a cancer on the planet. You know? Well, how about no? How about not that? How about that there's something to us?
Beautiful words. Beautiful. The primary reason for me making this video is because there's simply too much hate in the world. There's too much bigotry. There's too much hypocrisy, and we'll never get rid of it all. I'm not foolish enough to think that we will get rid of it, at least not in my lifetime. However, hating another person gets us nowhere. If you hate someone else, you don't want to listen to them. You don't care about their opinion. You don't care about anything they have to say. However, when we respect everyone and we listen to what they have to say, even if they're wrong, in those instances, people will be more likely to want to listen to you. They will be more likely to change their mind or change their opinion about something if you talk to them as though they are just another human being. We need to love each other. We need to remember that hate is... it exists, and we as humans will always be subject to it because it's an emotion and it's a part of us. What we need to not let it do is rule over us. Because when we hate, we get angry. When we get angry, our thoughts get clouded. When our thoughts get clouded, emotions begin to flare. And that's never a good thing. But, as always, this has been your DM. Welcome and thank you for coming to my corner. And I hope to see you next time.